Welcome back to Conversations About Bookbinding, a Bookforge production. And today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into case binding history.
Case binding.
Which might seem like familiar territory.
Yeah.
But trust me on this one.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some real surprises here.
Definitely.
This deep dive was curated by Edward Patrick Krantz, the Honey Badger binder himself.
Absolutely. So
there's this stuff.
You know we're in good hands with this one.
We are.
So case binding, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yep.
It's how the cover boards are attached to the book.
Right.
Unlike older methods where they were like sewn directly on to the text block.
Yep.
In case binding, it's done separately.
Separate boards.
Boards are made separate.
Right.
And then you would hear them later.
Exactly.
And that's what gives us that really satisfying, like sturdy hardcover feel.
That classic hardcover.
Yeah.
The path to get there.
Yeah.
Was not straightforward.
It is.
As you might think.
A lot of people just assume, case binding came about.
Right.
And that was it.
Yeah, and it was all for efficiency. Right.
Right, exactly.
Printing press, boom.
Faster, cheaper.
Make them fast.
Yep.
But
not so simple.
Not so fast.
No.
One of the key sources we're looking at today is records done by Todd Pattison.
Okay.
Now, he's a book conservator who has looked at thousands of historical bindings.
I wasn't just looking at the manuals. He was looking at the actual books.
He got his hands dirty.
He did.
And what he found really challenges the accepted
timeline.
Yeah. So I got to admit, when I first saw our source material and I saw this phrase, adhered boards, I was like, oh, is this going to be exciting?
It doesn't sound
really. Trust me.
Oh, it is, though.
This is where it gets good.
This is where the juice is.
So tell me, what did Pattison find?
Well, Pattison discovered that adhered boards, which predate case binding, were far more common than anyone realized.
Okay.
And they were being used way earlier than we thought.
Okay, so give me the dummies version.
Okay, so
what is an adhered board?
Imagine you've got your text block. It's all sewn up, nice and neat. Instead of lacing the boards on like you would traditionally, you just glue them straight onto the spine.
Interesting.
Often using the end papers themselves as part of that gluing surface. So it's this kind of hybrid between those really old sewn board binding and then the later case binding that we know.
So like a missing link.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a missing link.
Okay.
And here's the thing. He found examples of this going all the way back to the 1600s.
No way.
Yeah.
I thought they were like...
Much later.
Yeah.
Nope. 17th century, we've got adhered boards all over the place.
So not just like cheap pamphlets and stuff.
No. We're talking high-end books, beautiful books.
Okay.
There's even this stunning 17th century Dutch binding.
Okay.
You would look at this thing and swear it was sewn.
Right.
All this beautiful tooling. And nope, adhered boards.
Wow. Okay.
It's wild.
So big deal.
Right.
So what?
So what?
They were using this technique.
Why should we?
Like, why should our listeners care?
Yeah, good question.
What's the significance of this?
Well, for one thing, it really changes how we think about the history of bookbinding.
Okay.
You know, the traditional story is that case binding came along as a response to mass production.
In the 1800s.
Exactly. 1800s, printing press.
Yeah.
Everybody wants books. Got to make them faster, cheaper.
Right.
But the fact that they were using adhered boards so widely, even on really expensive books, tells us there's more to the story.
So it wasn't just about...
There wasn't just about efficiency.
Efficiency.
No.
There were other reasons why bookbinders would choose to do this.
Absolutely. These are craftspeople.
Right.
They cared about their work.
Yeah, they weren't just like...
cutting
corners.
Oh, whatever's cheapest.
Right.
They were making choices based on all these factors.
Right, the type of book.
Exactly.
What was going to be used for.
The materials they had available.
Right, okay.
Sometimes even aesthetic reasons.
And that's what I find so fascinating about this.
Yeah.
You know, we think about bookbinding and it's just like a process.
Right.
But it's a craft.
It's a craft.
And there's all these decisions being made.
Absolutely.
That are deliberate.
It's got its own logic, its own tradition.
Exactly.
And people were innovating within that.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder about, the socioeconomic context too.
Sure.
Like, were certain types of bindings associated with...
Right. Like, was this a class thing?
Yeah. Or like a purpose.
Right. We're adhered boards.
Yeah.
A way to make high quality books. but a little more affordable.
Right.
So they could reach a wider audience.
So interesting.
Lots to think about.
Okay, so adhered boards, they weren't just a cheap alternative. They were their own thing.
Their own merits, their own history.
With a history going back
way back,
further than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
So if case binding wasn't just about mass production, what was the real catalyst?
That's what Pattison wanted to figure out.
Yeah.
And based on his research, he makes a pretty compelling case.
Yeah.
Decorations. Specifically, the rise of machine stamping.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, suddenly you have was a way to create beautiful covers faster.
Way faster.
Yeah.
More uniformly.
Yeah, than hand tooling.
Exactly. It's a game changer.
It's a big shift.
Think about it. Before machine stamping, covers were mostly plain.
Right.
Or you had to do all this hand decoration.
Yeah, very time consuming.
Right. But suddenly, you could crank out these covers with intricate designs.
Yeah.
Lettering, images even.
Wow.
It opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Right. And like for marketing and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It changes the game completely.
So was it the desire for these elaborate machine-stamped covers?
I think so.
That led to case binding really taking over?
That's what Pattison thinks.
Okay.
And he's got some good evidence.
Okay.
For example, he looked at Benjamin Bradley, Boston binder, early adopter. Stamping technology.
Right.
And what's interesting is, even as he's playing around with these new machines, he's still using adhered boards alongside case binding.
So it's like we're seeing that transition happen in real time.
You're catching that moment of shift.
Wow. Okay.
And there's another great example, a binder in Northampton, Massachusetts, who was probably buying pre-stamped cloth
interesting.
from Bradley in Boston.
Okay.
So you can see the spread of case binding is linked to these new materials.
So it's not just about the technique.
It's not just the technique.
It's the resources.
It's the supply chain,
So we're piecing together the puzzle. It seems like the story of case binding is a lot more complicated.
More nuanced, than just old versus new.
Yeah.
Slow versus fast.
Right. It's not just about like
expensive versus cheap.
Yeah. Cost cutting and stuff.
Right. It's about aesthetics. It's about technology.
It's all these factors coming together.
And economic factors. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a fascinating story.
Yeah. This is really cool.
It is.
I'm already
I know, right?
Wanting to go look at old books.
Let's go find some adhered boards.
Yeah. And see if I can spot it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. This is great.
It's like a secret code to bookbinding history.
I love it.
Me too. I'm still thinking about those adhered boards.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize that sometimes what seems like a way to cut corners can actually be its own sophisticated technique.
Right, with its own advantages even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not always about progress.
Yeah, it challenges our assumptions about that. For sure. So speaking of looking closely, I know some of our listeners might be thinking, okay, so how do I actually spot this?
Right. How do you tell?
If I've got an old book, how do I know?
Yeah. Is this adhered boards or is this case binding?
It sounds like detective work.
It is a bit of detective work.
Okay, so what are our clues?
Well, first of all, you got to be willing to really look at the book.
Not just like a casual glance.
No. You got to get in there, feel the spine, look at the cover. Even try flexing the boards a little.
Okay. So what are we looking for specifically?
One clue is the tightness of the spine.
Okay.
Because the boards are glued directly to the text block. Adhered board bindings tend to have a very tight spine.
Okay.
Not much give.
Right.
You might also see some evidence of the adhesive itself.
Oh, interesting.
Under the paste down.
So like remnants of glue.
Yeah. Maybe some little bits of paper stuck in there.
Okay. Got it.
That could be a sign.
What about the turn-ins?
The turn-ins,
That's where the cover material folds over.
Exactly. That's where the covering material folds over the edges of the boards if they're uneven. Or oddly shaped. That could be a sign.
That it wasn't laced on in the usual way.
Exactly. It's just that maybe something different was going on.
Interesting. And this might sound counterintuitive.
Okay.
But sometimes a hollow back can actually be a clue.
Now you're thinking, wait a minute, isn't a hollow back
a
feature of case binding?
Right, where there's a gap between the spine and the cover boards.
You're absolutely right.
So how does that work with adhered boards?
Well, some binders were clever.
Okay.
They figured out how to create that hollow back effect.
Wow.
Even with adhered boards.
Okay.
There's this example from 1833.
Okay.
It's got a hollow back. But the boards are clearly adhered.
So they found a way to make it work.
They did.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It shows that binders were adaptable.
Right.
They were willing to experiment
and innovative
to achieve certain effects.
Yeah, so it's not like adhered boards were just this crude technique.
No, not at all.
There was skill involved.
A lot of skill, a lot of ingenuity. Even when they were working within these, apparent limitations, but they found ways to push the boundaries.
And that reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, about the shift to case binding.
Yeah.
Not just being about efficiency or cost cutting.
Right. There was more to it.
There were these aesthetic considerations.
Absolutely.
The desire for these elaborate machine-stamped covers.
The technology played a role.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that even within case binding, there's a lot of diversity.
Yeah, there's so many different styles.
Oh, so many styles.
And
different materials, different approaches.
Right.
It's not just one monolithic thing.
And the choice of covering material is huge, too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you got leather.
Leather, vellum,
cloth,
even wallpaper sometimes.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
It's really amazing.
And each material has its own story to tell.
For sure, and its own challenges, too. Right.
Working with cloth is different from working with leather.
Right.
And the binder had to take that into account.
There's that propriety of design, right?
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Like there's a certain etiquette to bookbinding.
Absolutely. A respect for the materials and for the craft itself.
You're not going to bind a prayer book in snakeskin.
Probably not the best choice, no.
But the point is that the materials and the techniques,
they all have meaning.
Yeah.
They're not arbitrary.
They reflect the values of the time.
The aesthetics.
So it's not just about function.
It's about so much more.
Yeah, it's about art and symbolism.
It's about the whole package.
And it makes you think about those early cloth bindings. They were a revolution.
They were.
In terms of making books more affordable.
Absolutely.
But they also presented these new challenges.
For sure. Cloth is cheaper than leather.
Yeah.
But it's not as easy to work with.
Right.
So binders had to come up with new techniques, new glues, new ways of applying them.
Exactly. It was a whole new learning curve.
And it's fascinating to see how they tackled those challenges.
It really is. And it was a collaborative effort.
Between binders,
publishers,
material suppliers.
Everybody had to work together.
To figure it out.
To find solutions, yeah.
And it wasn't just about making books cheaper.
Right.
They also wanted to make them better.
Improve the quality, make them last longer.
Yeah. I mean,
those early case bindings had a reputation for being flimsy.
Especially at the joints.
Oh, yeah, the joints.
And warping.
Warping, yeah. Big problem.
So they really had their work cut out for them.
They did.
But they figured it out.
They did. Through trial and error, they refined the techniques.
Stronger glues.
Better ways of preparing the cloth.
Right.
It was a process.
And those changes, those little refinements, had a lasting impact.
They really did.
It's like a ripple effect.
That's like a chain reaction.
Yeah. Changing not just how books were made.
Right.
But how they were read and experienced.
Exactly. It's all
case binding.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about efficiency.
It was about creating a book.
Right.
That was both durable and beautiful.
Yeah.
A book that would stand the test of time.
A book that could tell its own story.
Exactly.
Through its construction.
And its materials.
Yeah.
It's like a legacy.
And that story continues today.
Oh, absolutely.
As case binding keeps evolving.
It has to adapt.
Yeah.
The world is changing. Reading habits are changing.
New technologies.
But case binding is still here.
Yeah. And I think it has a bright future.
I do too.
Our sources even talk about some really exciting possibilities.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Integrating digital printing.
Oh, that's cool.
Personalized covers.
I love that.
Sustainable materials.
Important.
Yeah, and even reviving some of those old...
Oh, the handcrafted techniques.
Handcrafted techniques.
Oh, it's amazing.
That were almost lost.
It's like a rediscovery.
During industrialization.
It's a renaissance.
It's an exciting time to be a bookbinder.
It really is.
Who knows what the next chapter holds?
I can't wait to see.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The story's not over.
The story's just beginning.
And we are back.
Yeah, again.
For our final look.
The final chapter.
At case binding. It's amazing how much we've talked about already.
Yeah, it really is a lot.
From like...
adhered boards.
Adhered boards, that missing link to all the nuances of case construction.
And materials.
Yeah, all the materials.
And the choices that go into it all.
I think what really gets me is case binding.
Yeah.
Even though it's supposed to be
this industrial thing.
Yeah, this product of industrialization. It really helped spread knowledge.
It did.
And also made bookbinding an art form.
Elevated it, yeah.
So it's like this weird...
Yeah. It's
both sides of the coin.
Exactly. It's this tension.
Okay, so on the one hand, case binding helped make books cheaper.
Absolutely.
More accessible.
Along with
printing press.
The printing press, right? Coming together.
There are all these things working together.
And you can actually see, like our sources show, increased literacy rates.
It's a direct correlation.
Or in the 19th century.
It's amazing.
Because of case binding.
Because more people could get books.
It's mind-blowing to think about.
It really is.
Like we just walk into a bookstore.
Yeah, take it for granted.
Grab whatever we want.
But it wasn't always like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the case binding helped make that happen.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't just about mass production.
No, not at all.
Like it also...
It opened the door.
Yeah, it opened the door for
fine press edition.
Fine press, beautiful books.
Artists' books, where it's all about the craft.
Right. The beauty of it.
The artistry of it.
And there's this article we have that talks about about modern case binding and how it...
Even though it's supposed to be industrial, it led to this wave of
creativity.
Yeah,
experimentation.
So it's like...
It's a paradox almost.
It could be used for like...
Yeah, you could use it.
These utilitarian...
Everyday books.
Everyday books, right?
So we crank them out.
But also these really beautiful...
Yeah.
Exquisite...
works of art.
It's like that tension.
It's technology versus art.
Exactly.
But they coexist.
They influence each other.
I love that.
It's a beautiful thing.
And I think that's why case binding...
It's still relevant.
Yeah, even in this digital age.
With ebooks and all that.
Right, with ebooks and audiobooks.
Case binding is still here.
People still love it.
There's just something about...
A physical book?
Yeah, the feel of it.
Yeah, the way it feels.
The weight of it.
You can't get that from a screen.
You can't. It's a different experience.
And I think case binding will stick around.
It'll evolve. Yeah, it'll evolve. It'll adapt.
New challenges, new solutions.
But it's not going anywhere.
It's too powerful.
And our sources even talk about
I know, right?
These
exciting possibilities.
Possibilities, yeah.
Like what?
Like digital printing on covers.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Personalized covers.
That's amazing.
New sustainable materials.
Gotta be mindful of the planet.
And even bringing back...
I know, right?
Some of those lost...
The handcrafted techniques.
Yeah, those handcrafted techniques.
It's coming full circle.
It's really exciting to see what's going to happen.
It is. The future is bright.
So that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Wow, that went fast.
I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
I want to give a big thanks.
Yes.
To Edward Patrick Krantz.
The Honey Badger binder.
Honey Badger binder, yeah.
He really outdid himself with these sources.
Yeah, great picks.
Thank you, Honey Badger.
And to all of you listening.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
We hope you learned something new. Yeah, and maybe
you'll
look at your books a little differently now.
Yeah, take a closer look.
You never know what secrets you'll find.
Exactly. There's always more to discover.
Happy binding, everyone.
Happy binding.